Welcome back, boxing fans. Isn't it sad that some people need to go to such extremes to hate on people that don't look like them? But don't keep that same energy when capping for fighters that do look like them. I just saw somebody really making out as if somehow Shakur Stevenson is this incredible player, Hall of Famer, pound for pound fighter. And I like Shakur. I think Shakur's skill set is incredible. He might not be the kind of fighter I like to watch, but you still got to appreciate a great fighter. But when we look at him in comparison to, say, a fighter who consistently gets criticized and ridiculed, all because he's not black and doesn't look like a black guy, all you have to do is look at what these two players have done, compare them side by side, and it's clear who has done more and deserves to be ranked higher on a pound for pound list. So we look at Shakur head to head with Junto Nakatani, both around the same age, both three-weight world champions, both unified champions. The one difference is that Junto literally has beaten champions to win titles in almost every single weight division he's been in. 118, 115, and 112. Whereas when you look at a Shakur Stevenson, he was given a WBO title, vacant title shot at 126. Didn't beat a world champion. Moved to 130, fought a world champion in Jamal Herring, and then unified against a world champion, obviously, in Valdez. And then beat another fighter to defend his title, even though he didn't make weight on that fight, missed weight, got stripped of his title, but that fighter did go on to become a champion. So those are the three champions that Shakur Stevenson fought. Herring, Valdez, Consacao. Then he moved up to 135 and got another vacant title for the WBC belt. After Devin Haney dropped the belt, he was one of a few fighters who ended up getting vacant titles. Obviously, Lomachenko fought Kambosos for a vacant title. Tank Davis was just elevated, didn't fight anyone to move up from regular champion to super champion to become a two-weight world champion. Once again, a guy who won a title but didn't beat a champion. And then, of course, Shakur, who fought for a vacant WBC title. And then you had Burchelt, who fought Navarrete for the vacant WBO title. You look at the difference between Shakur and Junto. I just listed the champions that Shakur fought. 3 world champions in 3 weight divisions. Junto's fought 9 world champions. 9. He beat Akui, who was just in Fight of the Year against Ken Shiro early on in his career, who after losing to Junto went on to become a world champion, was just in a Fight of the Year with Ken Shiro at 108 pounds. Sorry, 112 pounds. Right? If you didn't see that fight, go check it out. Best Fight of the Year. What a war. Then he, of course, beat Yabuki, who is the only man to beat Ken Shiro. Ken Shiro, who is a pound-for-pound fighter as well. Of course, because he's not black and doesn't look like many of these YouTubers. He also is criticized and not put on pound-for-pound lists because ignorant fools want to glaze black fighters that look like them that haven't accomplished as much. I mean, Ken Shiro's done more than almost every single fighter on the pound-for-pound list, except for the top 4 fighters, top 5, right? Canelo, Crawford, Usyk, and Inouye. Those 4 fighters have all done more than Ken Shiro. But outside of those 4 fighters, nobody else has done more than Ken Shiro in the pound-for-pound list. But we're talking about Junto. So Junto beat, of course, Akui and Yabuki. Yabuki, the only fighter that beat Ken Shiro. Kenshiro did come back and beat Ibuki in the rematch. Ibuki then went on to become a world champion and currently is a world champion. We might get a Kenshiro Ibuki rematch fight, right? Which would be a trilogy fight, and obviously is for 3-belt unification currently at 112 pounds. Of course, he also fought a world champion to win his first title at 112 pounds, right? Sorry, I'm just going off the top of my head. It escapes me who he fought. Magramo. And then, of course, he beat Angel Acosta, another world champion, right? Then he moved up to 115 pounds, where literally the champion at that weight class literally dropped the title to avoid him. And that was 4-weight world champion Japanese fighter Ioka, right? He was in line to fight Ioka, which would have been a fucking historically great matchup between two great Japanese fighters. But Ioka chose to drop the WBO title to literally duck and avoid Junto, as well as Bam Rodriguez, who consistently, as I pointed out in many videos, has done flips and fucking flops, all to avoid potentially facing Junto Nakatani. When he could have went to 112 pounds and fought Junto, he chose to jump up 2 weight divisions to fight older fighters. And then, of course, once Junto went up to 115, he chose to go back down to 112, right? And then once Junto went up to 118, Bam decided to go back up to 115. And now, of course, he could go up as the WBC champion and take on Junto, the 118-pound WBC champion, but he's choosing to unify against indescript, unknown world champions at 115 pounds instead of taking on a pound-for-pound fighter. So, right there, you also see these top-level fighters, really accomplished, who are pound-for-pound quality dudes, who literally ducked and dodged him like crazy. Because he couldn't get fights with the big guys at 115 pounds, such as Tanaka as well, and others. He chose to move up. But he did fight Rodriguez, who just beat Yafai. Obviously, we just found out he failed a drug test. But Rodriguez is a 2-time world champion. Even if you take away the Yafai victory, which was a pretty dominant performance, he'd won earlier in his career as well, after getting beat by Roman Gonzalez back in the day. So this was a guy that obviously beat Yafai, but couldn't handle Junto Nakatani at 115 pounds. Then Junto went up to 118. Of course, he flatlined fucking the Australian guy who was a world champion. He beat Alfredo Santiago, a guy who just beat Donaire to become the WBC champion, right? So this guy was good enough to beat Donaire, but Junto Nakatani steamrolled that fucking dude, made easy work of him. And then he just defended recently against undefeated Japanese world champion Nishida. And obviously now, after 9 world champions that he's faced, he's potentially going to be facing a Nui in 2026 for his 10th world champion and his 4th weight class and his first opportunity to become an undisputed champion, if he's able to beat Inui, which obviously is a big ask. If he beats Inui, all this hate and fucking negativity that people threw to him looks fucking ridiculous, because now he becomes a pound-for-pound top 5 fighter in boxing. If he loses to Inui, I mean, he lost to a future Hall of Famer, potentially the best Asian fighter in history, and a guy who's pound-for-pound top 3 right now. So it's not really the worst thing that could happen to a guy. It's easy to bounce back after that loss and still go on to become a Hall of Famer and have a great career. But, you know, this is the guy who's being criticized, and a guy like Shakur's being glazed. And don't get me wrong, I think Tank Davis been ducking Shakur like crazy. I mean, Devin Haney chose to drop his title instead of fight Shakur and moved up to face Regis Prograis at 140 pounds instead. So, you know, of course, you had Lomachenko, who Shakur was calling out at one point. That was an in-house fight, but obviously that fight was never made or materialized. Shakur ended up leaving Top Rank, so he basically closed the door on that fight ever really happening anyway. But nonetheless, we know stylistically he's a tough fighter that people don't want to fight. But Junto's the same. This guy is a long Tommy Hearns knockout fucking monster, destroying motherfuckers, walking through dudes, right? He beat the shit out of Nishida in his current fight. He could have controlled range and just gradually broke Nishida down, but he chose to step to Nishida, took Nishida's power, walked through it, and proceeded to fucking beat the crap out of Nishida, breaking his orbital bone, swelling up his eyes so he looked fucking like the Elephant Man, and eventually stopping him late in that fight. Very different than some of the fights we've seen previously, where he chose to be more defensive, fight behind his long jab, and just wait for his backhand to land and eventually fucking knock dudes out, right? Like stylistically, the difference between Shakur and Junto, that shit's night and day. One guy is must-watch TV. The other guy, is the kind of fighter that potentially you put on free in prison as torture for prisoners. And I ain't hating. I'm just saying some styles are entertaining. Some styles just aren't entertaining. Shakur historically has been a guy that just hasn't entertained. Junto has been one of the most dominant fighters over the last 3 years, which is why he's elevated himself into the pound for pound list. But of course, because he's not black, he's Asian, for some reason people need to find a way to discredit him and act as if he's not fought anyone. He's fought 9 fucking world champions. He's 9-0, probably with 8 KOs versus current or previous world champions. Shakur has faced 3 world champions and is 3-0 against them with 1 KO, right? And sure, guys might go on to become champions afterwards, adding more names to his resume. But at this point, it's clear 9-6. It ain't even close. And when you think about who the best fighter that Shakur fought and the best fighter that Junto fought, I mean, who jumps out at you against fucking Shakur Stevenson? Oscar Valdez? So Oscar Valdez is the best champion that Shakur has faced in his career. Oscar Valdez is okay, right? But I mean, when you compare him to some of the guys that obviously Junto fought, they're already more fucking accomplished than Oscar is. You got 2-time world champions, right? Yabuki got a win versus a pound for pound fighter. He's been a 2-time world champion, right? When he stepped up and had his biggest fight, he knocked that guy out. When Valdez stepped up in every opportunity, he's gotten fucking beat the crap out, whether it was against Shakur or Navarrete. So, at this point, you could say both of these guys haven't fought an elite fucking killer. And the truth of the situation is that's what we want them to do. We want Shakur to face Tank Davis. That's his legacy fight. We want Junto to face Inouye or Bam, but Bam been ducking him. Obviously, Inouye is his legacy fight. The biggest fight in Japanese boxing history. A fight that in Japan will do well over 60,000 fucking people in the Tokyo Dome. Shakur could fight anybody in boxing right now. He ain't going to be selling 60,000 fucking seats in any place in America. This is a guy that barely can be fucking a headliner for cards now that he's no longer with Top Rank. Right? And I ain't hating. I'm just keeping it 100. You may like Shakur more than you like Junto, and that's fine. But you can't tell me he's a more entertaining fighter. You can't tell me he's a more dominant performer, because that ain't true. He's been in multiple fights where he's looked mediocre, won fights that nobody even wanted to watch. Every single fight you've watched Junto in, he's ended up walking away with a sensational knockout victory. We will see what happens with both of these guys moving forward, because obviously that's going to be the final thing that proves who is better, who is more accomplished, who is the real pound for pound fighter out of these two fighters. At this point, you could easily say, fine, that will be Shakur. Or you could say, yeah, that's easily going to be Junto. But the point is, we got to wait and see who ends up living up to that. At this point, though, to try to dismiss Junto Nakatani and act as if he hasn't fought anyone when he's already beaten 9 world champions, and act like Shakur Stevenson somehow is fucking this great, well-tested, well-proven fighter. I mean, even this fight he's fighting this weekend, he's fighting William Zepeda. William Zepeda has never been a fucking world champion. So even when you beat William Zepeda, you still only fought 3 world champions. Sorry, right? And this is the same William Zepeda. Literally, people thought got beat by what's his face, Farmer, multiple times. So let's not try to glaze now if Shakur goes in and wins, because it was like not that long ago where you're shitting all over Zepeda, talking about how Farmer beat him, right? And if Farmer beat him, then how much fucking can you glaze fucking Shakur for beating a guy that Farmer already beat? But that's the problem with these kind of boxing fans. Everything with them is racial. I'm not using race as a way to push Junto. I'm using facts and accomplishments. Both guys are 3-weight world champions. Both guys are unified. One guy fought 9 world champions. One guy fought 3. One guy's knockout percentage is like 80 something percent. The other guy's knockout percentage is like 30-40%. One guy is must watch TV. The other guy it needs this fight to be fucking sensational, because really people are losing interest with him. Even people in his own fucking community are losing interest to him. People are favoring Tank Davis and Devin Haney over Shakur, and talking about how they're the faces of the sport and really downplaying Shakur. So this is even within his own culture. Nobody in Japan is shitting on fucking Junto Nakatani. Nobody in Japan is trying to downplay Junto's accomplishments. This is also a guy who fights and trains in the US. So a lot of that hate and criticism we see guys like Inui get before, oh, he doesn't even spar black fighters. You can't say that about Junto, because that ain't true at all. He lived and trained in America a lot. So he's been in sparring with fucking everybody. All the top fighters in California that everybody's sparring with, he's been in with them. He sparred all of them. So, that old fucking narrative is out the door, because that shit don't work. As far as him illegally wrapping his gloves, that hasn't been a fucking issue. But I'm sure people will say he's using PEDs, because it's always fucking something. People always need to find some way to downplay and dismiss a dude that's not black. I mean, we just saw that today and yesterday with Cooper Flagg. People are downplaying him. You saw Gilbert Arenas podcast. Everyone's in their emotions because people are hyping up Cooper Flagg. They didn't have the same feeling when people were hyping up Zion. They were hyping up Zion. Nobody was going, oh, maybe you shouldn't be so over the top with these accomplishments and this hype based on Zion Williams, because, he hasn't even played a game in the NBA yet. No. Nobody was fucking doing that. People were hyping him up like fucking crazy. Cooper getting hyped up, and then all of a sudden, oh, slow down. He's not that good. He hasn't done anything yet. And why is that? Because he's white. If he was black, you would not be hearing this kind of kickback. People would just be rolling with it, talking about how he's the second youngest fucking NBA player in history. A guy that was the college player of the year last year, took his team all the way to the Final Four, to the finals, lost a competitive game that they were more than fucking in position to potentially win. They didn't, because unfortunately that's sports. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. A guy that led his team in every single stat: points, rebounds, assists, blocks, steals. everything. But because he doesn't fit a narrative, people got to find ways to downplay, dismiss, and shit on him. The same way they're doing with Junto. But let me know what you think in the comment section below. Thanks for watching. Let me ask you this question. Who would you rather watch? Junto Nakatani or Shakur Stevenson?